Hey friends, today we're breaking down one of the most beautiful and most dangerous illusions in modern wealth. Palm Jumeirah. On screen it looks almost perfect. A palm-shaped island visible from space, waterfront villas, private beaches, yachts, luxury hotels, restaurants, and that feeling that human beings have finally beaten the sea. And that is exactly why it is so easy for people to build myths around this place. Myths about permanent luxury, guaranteed appreciation, and some kind of bulletproof paradise for the ultra-rich. But the reality is much more interesting and much harsher. Yes, Palm Jumeirah is still one of the biggest symbols of Dubai luxury and one of the most desirable addresses in the region. In 2025, Dubai's high-end housing market had a record year overall, and Palm Jumeirah stayed one of the hottest zones for deals above $10 million. Reuters, Knight Frank, and other market reports all confirm that the Palm remained a magnet for ultra-wealthy buyers and a major center of luxury demand. But once the regional war hit Dubai in 2026, these kinds of trophy assets suddenly started looking very different. Not like an untouchable fortress of capital, but like a beautiful, expensive, highly exposed display case. And that is where the real story begins. The problem with Palm Jumeirah is not that it is suddenly falling apart in real time, the way dramatic videos love to claim. The problem is something deeper. This is an asset that sells a dream brilliantly, but that dream depends on constant technical upkeep, a reputation for total safety, and a global market willing to pay a premium for an address that is supposed to feel flawless all the time. The moment one of those pillars starts to wobble, the perfect image begins to crack, not always in concrete, but in psychology. And in luxury real estate, psychology can kill value faster than structural damage ever could. The biggest mistake people make with Palm Jumeirah is thinking they can judge it like a normal residential neighborhood. It is not a neighborhood. It is an engineering and financial organism that from day one required constant intervention, maintenance, and expensive support. Official materials from Nakheel and contractors make that very clear. The Palm has already gone through major reinforcement and upkeep work. Van Oord completed a large maintenance project across the trunk fronds and outer crescent, and in 2022 and 2023, Nakheel finished a separate beach enhancement program, which in plain English means they were actively working again on shoreline protection and beach stability. That fact alone does not mean disaster. For an artificial island, ongoing maintenance is normal. But it destroys one of the biggest myths, the idea that Palm Jumeirah is some permanent luxury asset that can just sit there untouched forever. It is not. It is an asset that has to be maintained, protected, and funded over the long run, not just celebrated as a one-time engineering victory over nature. Subscribe to the channel and drop your opinion in the comments. Would you buy a villa on a man-made island if you knew that behind the postcard image there was a non-stop fight against the sea, infrastructure wear, and rising upkeep costs? Because that is the uncomfortable truth that rarely shows up in glossy brochures. Oceanfront luxury on a reclaimed island is never cheap to own over time. And the older the asset gets, the more the story stops being about marble, facades, and waterfront views, and starts being about drainage, shoreline protection, sea barriers, utility systems, insurance terms, and whether the owner is willing to accept that part of the price is not just prestige, but an endless battle to preserve that prestige. Now for the most uncomfortable layer, the one the video senses but pushes way too far. There is no solid confirmed evidence that Lloyd's of London and multiple major insurers have completely stopped writing all new policies on Palm Jumeirah specifically because of some geological collapse. But there is another reality that is much more believable and, honestly, just as serious. Reuters reported in March 2026 that war-related damage and broader conflict risk were creating major insurance gaps for commercial property in the UAE and that notable losses in places like Palm Jumeirah might not even be covered under standard policies because war-related events are often excluded. That is not as dramatic as saying insurers are fleeing the island, but from an owner's point of view, it can be just as dangerous. Because the luxury property market does not run only on purchase price, it runs on the feeling that the asset is protected. The moment buyers realize that in a real regional crisis their insurance may not cover the most important risk, the whole safe haven image starts fading. At the same time, Reuters was also reporting the first signs of weakness in Dubai's broader property market after the war with Iran began. Transaction volumes dropped sharply. Some homes near Burj Khalifa and on Palm Jumeirah were already being offered at discounts of 12% to 15%. And investors started asking a new question. Not how much can I make here, but how safe is it to park my money here at all? That is not an engineering collapse of Palm Jumeirah. It is something potentially more dangerous, a crack in confidence. And luxury markets live on confidence. As long as people believe the address is permanent, exclusive, and secure, the price stays elevated. The moment belief turns nervous, even the most beautiful villa starts depending not only on its design, but on headlines, missile risk, insurance exclusions, and the political map of the region. That is why Palm Jumeirah today should not be read as a story about "the island is sinking," and not as a fairy tale about "everything is fine, stop asking questions." The truth is much more interesting. It is one of the most expensive and successful symbols of global luxury real estate, while at the same time remaining an asset that depends on constant technical care, careful reputation management, and an increasingly brutal stress test of its own resilience. In 2025, Dubai's market overall still looked incredibly strong. About 500 home sales above $10 million, more than $9 billion in that segment, and Palm Jumeirah sitting right in the center of ultra-wealthy demand. But in 2026, war exposed something important. Even the most expensive real estate on Earth does not live outside geopolitics. If Dubai stops being seen as an unquestionably safe haven, the Palm automatically stops being just paradise on the water and becomes a stress test for the whole model. Can you really sell an ultra-premium coastal asset as an almost risk-free dream in a region where the cost of security can change overnight? That is the real conflict. Not between sea and concrete, but between the marketing of permanence and the reality that permanence requires constant money, constant trust, and political calm. Palm Jumeirah has not become a ruin. It is still beautiful, still desirable, still liquid for the right wealthy buyer. But now it reveals much more clearly how the modern luxury world actually works. On the surface, it is paradise. Under the surface, there is always a pump running, and it cannot be allowed to stop. If Dubai can maintain security, engineering discipline, and investor confidence, the Palm will remain a symbol of defeating the impossible. If not, it may become a monument to a different truth. Even the most expensive islands in the world cannot override physics, insurance exclusions, and the nerves of global money.